start. On behalf of the Iowa Intermediary Network and Iowa Skilled Trades, I'd like to welcome you to the Build University series. And today we are looking at the electrical pathway, and we are joined with some great panelists that are excited to share their profession with us. And so we're going to start it off having them tell us who they are, where they're currently working, and how they got to their current position. So Trevor, if you want to go ahead and start, we'd love to hear about your journey to a field in the electrical pathway field.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name is Trevor Stevens. I'm the electrical instructor at Central Campus, which is a career and technical high school that's part of the Des Moines Public School District. So my pathway to the electrical industry is a little different than most, I think. And so it started in high school. I always found that being able to take information that was learned in a classroom and apply it to hands-on applications was something that I enjoyed. And so when I took a couple classes of electricity, I found that the hands-on applications and concepts introduced to me were something that I really liked. Unfortunately, though, at that time, there was sort of a strong push for students to attend college. And so the pathway from high school into the skilled trades wasn't presented to me. And not only was it not made clear, but the benefits of a career in the skilled trades were never emphasized enough, never shown to me like they need to be. So inevitably, I went to college for 5 years. I went to the University of Northern Iowa. I received my teaching degree and teaching license in earth science. But while I was still in college, I kind of came back to that idea of kind of continuing on and getting back to that hands-on learning that I really like. So while still in college, I actually applied for an apprenticeship in the Des Moines area. And as soon as I graduated college, I started my career as an electrical apprentice. And then 5 years later, I became a journeyman electrician, received my commercial electrical license. And then a few years later, I found a way to utilize both my teaching and my electrical license. And that was to teach electricity to students like yourselves at Central Campus. So it was one of those rare opportunities that I was sort of fortunate to have found. So that's a little bit about my story and as brief of a way to put it as possible. But I'm glad to see all your faces here and to talk to you about the career of electrical industry.
All right, my name is Jameson Carr. I'll give you a little background here in a second, but I am the Safety and Training Director for Klein Electric here in Des Moines. Started my career about 15 and a half years ago. High school kid, didn't know what I wanted to do. My brother had been an electrician for several years. And at that point, I was talking kind of with guidance counselors, some of my teachers, and they basically told me, you're too smart for that. You're too talented, this and that. And, if you go down that road, you're going to regret it and those kind of things. And so I spent a day, kind of watched my brother at work, kind of got a feel for what that looked like. At that time, he had a stay-at-home wife with 2 kids. So I knew that there was obviously money in it because, if you're not making money, it's pretty hard to afford to live like that. So I decided to take up his offer and become an electrician. Started in 2005 wiring houses and apartments. Did that for about a year and a half. Changed over, did commercial for several years. Went from commercial to industrial and process control, a lot of factory work, stuff like that. And then got a pretty rare opportunity from my previous employer to go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 2 weeks and get a license for infrared thermography. So then at that point, I went through factories, hospitals, those kind of places, community colleges. I would go through their electrical systems using an arc flash suit. I would open all the gear while it's live, inspect it with an infrared imager, diagnose heat issues, write up anything that wasn't up to code or anything I felt could endanger their employees, stuff like that. Also performed what's called arc flash analysis. So I would work with engineering companies to determine how large of an explosion could take place at a piece of electrical equipment if something went wrong with it, things like that, to help factory workers who work on that equipment know what kind of PPE to use to properly maintain the systems. So after I had done that for several years, I was also an industrial service electrician at the same time. I got offered my current job here. Got a lot of exposure to safety and safe work practices and stuff like that through my previous employer and through some of the major industrial customers that we were working for. So it was kind of nice. I never at that point was like formally trained in safety, but I kind of absorbed it through my daily work. And then since then, I've gone to a lot of community college classes and stuff like that to get certifications. You know, kind of crazy because I started as an electrician and now I'm technically still an electrician, but I'm also an educator. So that's something I never would have thought would have come full circle for me, but here I am.
My name is Kylie. I also work for Klein Electric here in Des Moines. I am just recently a recruiter. I also handle a little bit of social media and some employee relations for Klein Electric, but I did start out in the field. I've been in construction for the last 6 years and specifically in the skilled trades for 3. My story is a bit similar to Trevor's. I went to college. I was told that I needed to, well, I don't know that I was even told. I didn't know that there were any other pathways. It was never encouraged by anybody else. When I finished college, I had a degree in animal science with a double minor in ag business and biology. Thank God my school was paid for because I played softball in college. So I do not have a ton of student loan debt. But after I was done with college and I was looking to get into a career, I couldn't find anything that was going to pay me more than $10 an hour, and I would be working with hogs, and I wasn't into that. So I ended up, my dad actually encouraged me to look into construction, and I just remember being like, I remember pushing him back a lot, like, no, I don't want to flip the sign that says stop and slow. I'm not interested in that. But he continued to encourage me. So I got into running heavy equipment. I got my CDL. I did that for 3 years. I really enjoyed that. But I wanted something that was more permanent, a career. And that's how I got into Klein Electric. So I would say, just while I've got the microphone, I would say there are a lot of good reasons to go to college. You want to become a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor, something that requires a degree. Otherwise, this is hopefully me telling you, like, I wish I would have had someone tell me this is a career path for you.
And I don't know, did Randy join the call? Okay, so what we'll do is just dive right into the questions. And I think Amy had put in the chat, students, teachers, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the panelists, please put that in the chat. But we do have a list of questions, and hopefully from our list, you get a knowledge, and it might be the same question that you would have asked our panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Kylie. So what kind of training or license do you need to go into the electrical field?
Straight from high school?
Either straight from high school, or do they need that 2-year degree in order to get into the field?
No, and I would encourage you to go straight into an apprenticeship if this is something that interests you, rather than go through the DMAC or like the community college route, because you cannot test for your journeyman's license until you have 8,000 on the job training hours. So if you go through the DMAC program and you get your schooling done first in those 2 years, you still have to wait until you have enough on the job training to be able to get licensed. It is a route that you can take. Like, let's say you're trying to decide between electrical and I don't know, maybe you think you might want to be a teacher, so you're going to go to a 2-year school first. That might be an okay route to take to kind of see if things fit for you. But if you know that this is what you want to do, I would go straight into an apprenticeship program. There is nothing that you need following your high school to that you have to have. We will hire anybody, even if you don't have experience.
Jameson, did you go straight? Well, you went the 4-year college route. and maybe this throws out to Trevor, Kylie, or Jameson. Kylie, you mentioned apprenticeship, and maybe some of our students don't know what apprenticeship means. If somebody could just tackle that and just kind of explain what an apprenticeship is.
Yeah, so apprenticeship is essentially going to be that you're learning on the job, and so this isn't a lab that's built in a classroom to give students exposure to a similar task. It's actually on the job. This is a job site that a customer is paying for, and they're paying you to do the work. So you're learning on the job while also getting your formal education through class time spent in a classroom so many weeks a year, typically 4 to 5 weeks a year. You'll be in a classroom and you'll learn the information that you don't necessarily always learn on the field every day. So it's the classroom kind of builds that foundation that when you get out into the job site, you'll expand upon and you'll build upon. And so this entire time while you're learning and while you're being trained, you're also being paid. You're receiving a weekly paycheck, and that paycheck's growing every 6 months or throughout the year. You'll see that paycheck grow for the length of your apprenticeship. And so that's one of the greatest benefits there, is that when you're looking at an apprenticeship, you're being paid. This is your job. This is your career, and you've already began making money, and you have health insurance and you have a retirement package, and there's all these things that you build equity and you build yourself during that time.
And we had a related question from Brandon in the chat. Can you all explain the earn while you learn model, whether it's union or non-union? And could you do a college while also doing an apprenticeship? So for example, night school, part-time.
The last part of it, I think, would be kind of tricky to do college and the apprenticeship at the same time. That's just a lot to digest. But kind of give you an idea of what our model looks like. We are a merit shop, so we are non-union. The way our apprenticeship works is the students attend 4 hours of class 1 night a week for 24 weeks. The nice thing about that is there's no interruption in your paycheck. So you work a full 40-hour week and you just have to sacrifice one evening to go to school. The school is relatively cheap. It's about $1,000 a year. So all said and done, 4 years of school is $4,000. I'm pretty sure you can't even buy books for Iowa State University for one semester, or 1 year, I should say, for $4,000. So it's a pretty good bang for your buck as far as that goes. And then the way we do it is we payroll deduct that from you. And then when you're done, as long as you get your license in the first 12 months, we give you back whatever your grade point average was. So if you got through school and you did great and you got a 90%, we're going to give you 90% of $4,000 back as a bonus check, which a lot of the people are like, whoa, what am I going to do with all this money? So that's pretty exciting. Plus, it really adds to the celebration of the fact that you did it. You're a journeyman electrician. By the way, go treat yourself with this money. So pretty cool how that works. And then kind of like Trevor was saying, you're going to start out making less money, and then progressively about every 6 months, you're going to see a little bit of an increase. There's a minimum increase, and then obviously people who really strive and show that this is what they want to do, stuff like that, typically get a little bigger raises as that scale moves, at least as far as on the merit side. The biggest thing with electrical is and this is no pun intended, but knowledge is power and power is money. There is so many different directions that a person can go in the electrical career. You could wire houses, you could do home automation, you could do what I used to do and go to factories, wire robot welders and stuff like that, which I always thought was cool, because when you're done, you watch it take all these parts and weld them together and you're like, yeah, I did that. But the other thing about being a tradesperson is your family will be so annoyed by every building you drive by and you're like, yeah, I wired that one, I wired this one. But it's one of those things that we step back and even 5 years later, you just have so much pride in what you've accomplished, what you've learned, and what you've done. So hopefully that kind of answered the question as far as how the apprenticeship works.
I agree with Jameson. I think trying to do a college, even if you were doing nighttime while taking an apprenticeship, would be a little overwhelming. You're working 40 hours a week. You're getting an education while being in the apprenticeship. So getting this additional, sort of on the side education would be a tough challenge. You could, however, take, if you knew that there was a math concept that you were struggling on in your apprenticeship, take some extra class to enhance that possibly during the night at a local community college. But it'd be a difficult challenge. One thing I kind of did, I looked at, and I see the question in the chat right now, kind of speaking to benefits, but I did go to college and I went for 5 years. And so when I walked away from college, I did have debt. So I took student loans. And so I spent 5 years, and when I left, I had negative $25,000. And so when I look at the 5-year apprenticeship, which is the same time frame, I started out making roughly about $23,000 my first year, and then that increased, like I said, every 6 months, roughly about 5 to 10%. So by the end of that 5 years, I was making roughly $61,000. And then that was on top of, I had health insurance, which was $1,200 a month or $14,000 per year. And then I received a retirement package that was roughly $5,000 a year. And so I wanted to put these numbers into to kind of give you a perspective of those differences. And so what I came up with was, during the 5-year period of my life that I was an apprentice, I accrued about $322,000 if you added everything up. And now, this isn't what came into my bank account. I had expenses and taxes and health insurance and retirement, but that is what I made during that time frame, where when you compare that to college, I lost $25,000 for that same period of time. And so I get just to help put that into perspective of what 5 years can do depending on the route you take.
All great information. And I'm going to go right back to you, Trevor. Specifically looking at, we have a lot of high school students on with us this morning. What other classes can they take right now while they're in high school to help bridge the gap, or to understand more about the career pathway of electrical, or anything that would help them once they become maybe potentially out in the workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's really important that students understand the importance of math and sciences towards becoming an electrician. And so not everyone's going to be great at these subjects, but just getting exposure, I think, is the most important part. Even if you take an Algebra 2 class that you feel is way over your head, you're exposed to that information. So maybe you get a D or an F when you take that class. What's important is that you learned it once and maybe it didn't stick, but if you ever encounter that again in the field or in your apprenticeship program classes, at least you have something that's familiar, you've seen it before, you can reference back. And so then, it might be easier that second time around. So I would encourage anyone to take as much math, so Algebra 1, geometry, trigonometry, possibly even Algebra 2. Sciences, physics and physical science that is electricity. I mean, when you look at electricity at its conceptual level, that's where it comes from. It's physics and even chemistry, understanding atoms. So getting into some science classes, again, you don't have to walk away feeling like you're a scientist, but just getting that exposure. Any electrical classes, obviously, engineering, carpentry, shop classes, taking summer construction camps, classes that teach communication skills, interview skills, resume building. Those are going to be really important. Being able to speak to customers, to employers, to fellow coworkers, that goes a long way. And then knowing how to kind of sell yourself, to build yourself up so you can say, this is why I'm such a great candidate to be an apprentice electrician, because of this. And so knowing how to talk about yourself as well. So that's what I would encourage classes in high school and learning about right now, those fundamentals.
I saw Kylie nodding her head. Do you have any other input on what other things students could utilize while they're currently in high school that will better prepare them for their future?
So on another panel, we had suggested possibly getting into OSHA 10. It's a class that you can take. It's probably not offered like in your high school, but the OSHA 10 class is something that we require that you have completed by the end of your 4 years of your apprenticeship on the merit side. And actually at Klein, we require that you finish it within your first year. So if you come in and you've already taken it, it's one step that we are saying that you're dedicated, you want to be here, you're taking that step in the right direction.
I will comment about the OSHA. Look at your local community colleges. Continuing education will offer some of those OSHA classes for students. So if you're interested in doing that over the summer, check out your local community college.
Along those lines too, we had a question in the chat. Are there any construction camps out there? And if so, how would they find them?
I mean, I can speak on behalf of a few that we've participated in, like Build My Future. It's not a summer program, but just getting, you know, into those, anything that's offered where you get exposure to construction and you can talk to some of those industry leaders. Unfortunately, with COVID, it altered what we had planned to do. But last summer, we had set up a bunch of construction camps at Central Campus throughout that year. So I was going to put on an electrical camp, and our carpentry teacher and our plumbing teacher were going to do similar camps that were about a 2-week camp to get exposure for middle school students, to just practice some of the basics, to pique their interest, to show them that this is, you know, this is something that can be fun and hands-on and isn't just reading from a textbook. You're doing things for that class. So, you know, finding those or talking to leaders in your area and about possibly putting those on, that's, I think, something that us as teachers can do, is reaching out for assistance. Maybe it's not, you know, we don't have the time maybe, or you know, you can't find the budget to do that, but maybe just talking to a local contractor and they would be happy to put that on. I think that's something we need to work on doing and encouraging in our communities, to kind of build those early opportunities for students.
I'm going to give Jameson the floor. How do you sell going into this career field to students? Why should they go into the electrical field?
Probably the biggest thing off the bat is my previous employer was up in Ames, and I cannot tell you how many people I worked with that had a 4-year degree from Iowa State and were working as a first-year apprentice to try and pay all that money back. And, you know, most of them, I even worked with a kid who'd spent 3 years in marketing. He was making 6 figures, and he hated going to an office so much that he gave up a 6-figure job to make $12 an hour to start over working with his hands. The big thing there is, you know, when you're 18 years old, not everyone knows what they want to do. So you get talked into going down a career path. You spend 4 years of college. That's all great. You have a good time. You get into the actual job and you're like, I hate this. The nice thing about an apprenticeship, whether it's electrical, plumbing, whatever, you know, if you go a year into apprenticeship school, it cost you $1,000 and you made money the entire time you were doing it. If you're like, you know what, this is not for me, you have a lot less skin in the game than you would have had if you'd have spent a year at Iowa State and been like, whoa, I spent $17,000 this year, plus my cost of living, didn't make any money, and I absolutely hate where I'm headed. So it gives you an opportunity to sample career paths that you wouldn't be as financially committed to, I would say. And everybody learns differently. The nice thing about the trades is we're more geared to learn hands-on versus in a classroom. We still spend some time in a classroom, but every year you need to spend 144 hours in a classroom for apprenticeship and 2,000 hours on the job working. So the majority of what you learn is hands-on, taught by other people. It's, you know, not a classroom setting. It's a more casual, non-formal kind of deal. And that's what really intrigued me.
Good advice and good input. Kylie, how about you? Why should students look into the electrical career field?
So I'm going to speak a little bit on, I know that there are some women in the chat. I can't see all your faces, but I can read your names. So we are at such a shortage. Our average electrician is nearing retirement, and we are going to have we already have a shortage. And then when we have all of these electricians retire, we are going to need people in the workforce if we're going to continue doing what we're doing. And if we only bring in half of the population that's eligible to become like that, they're in the right spot in their career, we're not going to be able to get it done. We have to bring in men and women into this trade.
And Kylie, just to reinforce here, a comment in the chat, how old do you have to be to start? I mean, anyone right out of high school could start, correct?
Yes, 18. I think, Jameson, we only have interns that are 17, right? We can't hire anyone that's 17.
Yeah, typically direct hires, we wait till you're 18, just for the fact that with Iowa's workforce laws, there's a lot of things that a person under 18 cannot be paid to do. Basically anything that uses a motor. So like every power tool we use today, technically we can't pay you to use those. But we typically will work with some high school students that are 17. But the way that works is at that time, they do not get paid. It's an educational experience. But we have quite a few of them that have transitioned through using some school time to come in and kind of learn that stuff. And then when they turn 18, we start to pay them for that hour and a half or whatever class time they come in. So it's kind of exciting for them because they're probably making a lot more money at a part-time job than most of their friends are making. So kind of cool how that works.
Yeah, and I think Brandon mentioned it. 18 will be that age where you can start making money off this, but getting into or in meeting with those contractors even before that at an earlier age can help kind of open that door and create that pathway. So if you do have the option of job shadowing or reaching out to, go there, visit the facility, that exposes you to those contractors and your name might sound more familiar in the future. So then when you do contact them, you can be like, hey, I came here when I was 17 and drove around with one of your service truck drivers for a day. And so I think all of that will help create that pathway or build that pathway up for you.
And as we're coming down in time, I know that Ann just put in the chat, if some students want to stay on and ask questions after the 10:30, we will entertain you staying on. I know that a student has a question about internships. So please stay on if you can, and we will make sure we answer those questions. One little follow-up, next week, we will be on a worksite tour at 10 o'clock. I believe it is with Klein Electric. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see Jameson and Kylie again next week, but please mark your calendars because this will be an on-site tour that you guys will get to go to witness them in their work environment.
I also, before we close, want to leave you with some email or some web addresses. If you're wanting more information, I know we talked a lot today about apprenticeships, to check out the Iowa Skilled Trades website, as well as the earnandlearniowa.gov website. I know if you're trying to gather more information about apprenticeships and trying to figure out where to start, do you go directly to a business and ask about their apprenticeship, or how do you know about all the apprenticeship opportunities in the state of Iowa? So again, those are two great sites to check into to further your career information and exploration as you progress in your pathway navigation. Also, don't forget to check out the iowain.org website for more events such as this that you can take part in. And I'd like to thank our panelists again for joining us. It's been a great learning opportunity for students as well as myself. We covered a lot of information, and I hope everybody had their questions answered. And if not, feel free to stick around a little bit and we will try and get to those questions. So on behalf of the Iowa Intermediary Network and Iowa Skilled Trades, thanks again for joining us for the the Build University series featuring the electrical pathway. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.